Hey guys, I've been reading a couple of things here and there, talking people screaming and yelling, saying, "Oh, the debt crisis and the whole austerity thing is coming to America. We're going to have riots in the streets because of it." Just thought I'd put in my 2 cents into it and my comments on it. One of the things they were throwing around was the value of the debt to the current GDP, and all that. And while I hadn't really looked at it in years, so I thought it was actually something interesting to look at. So anyways, this is skymachines.com, U.S. national debt per capita as percentage of GDP and by president term. I'll include a link to this below the video. Anyway, it has, over here you've got the year ending, the president, the current amount of national debt, the growth year over year, the growth during the presidency, and the annual average of the growth. Here you've got the current domestic product and the debt as a percentage of it. I'm assuming that they didn't have anything prior to Ford being in office, and that even then they didn't have the interest expense really calculated at that point either. So anyway, a couple of interesting things. During Carter, if you recall, we had really bad inflation during those periods of time, and just a bit of a recession. So we had, during his overall presidency, the debt grew a total of 42%, from 653 billion to 930 billion. And had an annual increase of 10.9%. Coming into the Reagan administration, during the beginning of it, we were still fighting recession, and by the end of it, things had mellowed out, but during his presidency, he had 189% growth. Now, to be fair, that's over 2 terms, but if you still normalize it out, that's 23.6% in growth, or increase in the national debt. Now, we had a debt of 2.6 trillion by the time he left, and a gross domestic product of 5 trillion. So we had a 52.5% debt to income ratio on that. Okay, Bush Senior, it stayed, had a 55.6% growth, of 13.9 over his term. Clinton was in for 8 years, actually had a budget excess 1 year in the year 2000. Overall, he had a 36% growth in the national debt at only a 4.4 annual. If you look at it, the national debt was 5.6 trillion, and our GDP surged a shitload all the way up to 9.8 trillion. So we were actually still above where we were in Reagan, but not by a whole lot. So it was 57.7%. Then you look now during the Bush W years, we had bit of an economic stall here. Things got a little bit worse, and then by the time we had the recession hit in 2008, we had a massive increase. This was during the TARP spending and whatnot, of 16%. So the debt spending the debt increased by 89%, but again, that's over 8 years, so it had about 11% per year over his term. Right now, we are at 2011 is the latest numbers we have. We have 15 trillion in debt and 15 trillion for our GDP. Part of the problem is the debt has been growing pretty substantially. I mean, you look at Bush Senior, we had 13.9%, Clinton at 4%, George W. at 11%, and right now we're at 13.8%. The debt's gone up significantly, but the problem is the GDP has stalled basically for the last 8 years, 9 years. So it's just our income is stalling and our debt hasn't slowed down at all. An interesting trend, W was actually better off at spending than I thought he was. And then he had the 3 years of TARP and basically trying to get us out of recession, and now the last year for 2011, it had dropped back down to 8%. Now granted, we need all of these to be back at this kind of a percentage. So it's not looking good, but I'm sick to death of all the doom and gloom. Oh shit, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. The numbers we have here are way below what we had during the Reagan years. Now the overall debt amount per debt to income is almost doubled, but an interesting little thing here. Our amount of interest we're having to pay as a percentage of GDP. Back under Reagan, when he got out of office, it was 4%. During Bush, it got up as high as 4.8%. Right now, we're at 3%. So life's not good. I'm not saying it is, but it sure as shit ain't the doom and gloom we've been hearing. So, definitely we need to, things have to change. We need to do the right thing. But it's not as bad as all that. Anyway, later.